No.74 Squadron RAF, also known as Tiger Squadron, from its tiger head motif, was a squadron of the Royal Air Force. It operated fighter aircraft from 1917 to the 1990s. History: First World War. The squadron was first formed at London Colney on the 1st of July 1917. No.74 Squadron was a training unit flying Avro 504 kiloseconds. Its first operational fighters were S.E.5s in March 1918. The squadron served in France from April until February 1919, when it returned to Britain, where it was disbanded on the 3rd of July 1919. During its wartime service, it was credited with 140 enemy planes destroyed and 85 driven down out of control, for 225 victories. 17 aces had served in the squadron, including Victoria Cross winner Major Edward Manick, Ira Taffy Jones, Benjamin Roxburgh Smith, future Air Commodore Keith Caldwell, Andrew Kiddy, Frederick Stanley Gordon, Sidney Carlin, Frederick Hunt, Clive Glynn, George Hicks, Wilfred Ernest Young, Henry Dolan, Harris Clements, George Gould, and Frederick Luff. Interwar years. During the Abyssinian crisis of 1935, the squadron was reformed in September to operate out of Malta with Hawker Demon two-seater fighters. In July the following year, the squadron, with its Demons, was shipped back to England. It re-equipped with Gloucester gauntlets in April 1937 at RAF Hornchurch, and formed part of the newly created Fighter Command. The gauntlets were exchanged from the Supermarine Spitfire Mk.I in February 1939. World War II. On the 6th of September 1939, after an early morning air raid alert, a flight of No.56 Squadron Hawker Hurricanes took off from North Wheel. These were followed by 2 reserve Hurricanes. The 2 reserves were identified as enemy aircraft and Spitfires from Hornchurch. Among them 74 Squadron were ordered to attack them. Both were shot down. One pilot, P.O. Montague Hulton Harrop, was killed. The other pilot, Frank Rose, survived. The pilot who fired the fatal shots was 74 Squadron's John Freeborn. The exact story of what happened in this incident, which came to be known as the Battle of Barking Creek, may never be known. Even the origin of the name is obscure, as it did not take place above Barking Creek but near Ipswich in Suffolk. This was the first RAF operational death of the war. At the subsequent courts-martial, it was accepted that the entire incident was an unfortunate error. The squadron, as part of No. 12 Group RAF, first saw combat during the evacuation from Dunkirk, in battles which exacted a heavy toll on both pilots and aircraft. Thereafter No.74 served successfully through the Battle of Britain. Mark I Spitfires were replaced with the Mark E in September 1940 at RAF Coltishall. The squadron moved back south to RAF Biggin Hill in October for the end of the battle. The squadron went to the north of England in July 1941 to regroup, for the moving around to stations in Wales and Northern Ireland until in April 1942 it was sent, without aircraft, to the Middle East, arriving in Egypt in June. The squadron was then moved to Palestine to operate as a maintenance unit for USAAF B-24 Liberators. It received Hurricane IBs in December 1942 and served in Iran until May 1943, moving back to Egypt for shipping patrols and conversion to the Spitfire Mk.VB and Mk.VC in September 1943. In late October 1943 the squadron got Mk.IX Spitfires, which were swapped for Mk. XVIs in March. No. 74 returned home just in time to take part in the D-Day landings in June 1944, using its aircraft as fighter bombers supporting the Allied liberation of France, Belgium and the Netherlands. Post-war, scarcely 3 days later, the squadron was sent back to England to equip with jets, initially the Gloster Meteor Mk. 3, later the F-4. Based at RAF Horsham-St Faith, the squadron kept Meteors until 1957, latterly equipped with the improved Meteor F-8, when they were issued with a more modern fighter type, the Hawker Hunter. In June 1959, the squadron, under the command of squadron leader Johnny Howe, moved to RAF Coltishall for re-equipment with the English Electric Lightning F-1 in mid-1960. In 1964 they moved to RAF Lucas to get F-Mk. 3, then F-Mk. 6 Lightnings in 1966. The squadron moved to RAF Tengar in Singapore, where it operated alongside 20 Squadron which flew Hunters, and 81 Squadron which flew Canberra PR-9s. The squadron flew its E-Lightning F-6s to RAF Akrotiri, Cyprus to hand them over to 56 Squadron and disbandment on 31 August 1971. The squadron was reformed at RAF Watersham in October 1984, with ex-US Navy, Marine F-4Js in RAF service that were purchased by the RAF as a stopgap measure to replace those of 23 Squadron that had been sent to the Falklands after the war. 74 Squadron gave up their F-4J Phantoms and received surplus Phantom FGR-2s in January 1991, disbanding in October 1992 when RAF Watersham began its transition to the Army Air Corps. On 5 October 1992, 74 Squadron stood up with the British Aerospace Hawk as part of 4FDS at RAF Valley in the weapon instruction role. At the 1993 Tiger Meet, 74 Squadron won the coveted Silver Tiger Trophy while competing against Mirages and F-16s. As FLTLT Will Jonas said, "Not bad for a training unit A." With the rationalization of 4FDS to just 2 squadrons, 74 Squadron was disbanded on the 22nd of September 2000. In 2008, No. 74 would have celebrated its 90th anniversary. However, No. 74 Squadron still lives on through the 74 Tiger Squadron Association, which brings together former Tigers from all generations for a yearly reunion dinner. Pending raising the necessary funds, plans are in place to create a museum dedicated to the squadron's history at their former base of Horsham St Faith, now Norwich Airport. Famous pilots associated with the squadron: Keith Caldwell, John Freeborn. 12 kills, 1 probable, 5 damaged, was with his squadron longer than any other Battle of Britain pilot and had flown more operational hours. A.G. Sailor Mallon. 32 victories. Edward Mannix. 61 victories, of which 35 were made with 74 Squadron. John Mungo Park. 74 Squadron aircraft. July 1917 to March 1918 Avro 504K. March 1918 to February 1919 Che 5A. September 1935 to April 1937 Hawker Demon. March 1937 Gloucester Gladiator I. March 1937 to February 1939 Gloucester Gauntlet II. 1939 Hawker Hurricane I. 1938 to 1940 Miles Magister 14A. February 1939 Supermarine Spitfire I. Anamp, Iowa. June 1940 to December 1941 Supermarine Spitfire Anamp, IIB. May 1941 to March 1942 Vickers Supermarine Spitfire VB. December 1942 to September 1943, Hawker Hurricane IIB-IIC. September 1943 to April 1944, Vickers Supermarine Spitfire VB. September 1943 to April 1944, Vickers Supermarine Spitfire VC. October 1943 to April 1944, Vickers Supermarine Spitfire IX. April 1944 to March 1945, Vickers Supermarine Spitfire LFX. March 1945 to May 1945, Vickers Supermarine Spitfire LF-16E. May 1945 to March 1948, Gloucester Meteor F-3. December 1947 to October 1950, Gloucester Meteor F-4. 1950 to 1957, Gloucester Meteor T-7. October 1950 to February 1957, Gloucester Meteor F-8. March 1957 to January 1958, Hawker Hunter F-4. November 1957 to 1960, Hawker Hunter F-6. 1959 to 1960, Hawker Hunter T-7. June 1960 to April 1964, English Electric Lightning F1 and AMP F1A. April 1964 to September 1967, English Electric Lightning F3. 1961 to 1967, English Electric Lightning T4. June 1967 to August 1971, English Electric Lightning T5. June 1967 to August 1971, English Electric Lightning F6. August 1984 to January 1991, McDonnell Douglas Phantom F4J. January 1991 to October 1992, McDonnell Douglas Phantom FGR-2. October 1992 to September 2000, British Aerospace Hawk T-1, T-1A.